Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show, it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Pennyworth. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, we see, a year has passed, and in that year frame, the Raven Society, now the Raven Union, has risen to power and is basically in control. Because I think they said that, basically, it's in 90% of control. I think London's the last place. Once they have that, they completely will have England, completely and utterly under their control. Because at the same time, the Queen, as well as some surviving, higher-ups. Because, there's a new Prime Minister, so I guess it's insinuating, the previous Prime Minister we got to know last season is dead. Potentially, but some of the higher ups, the Queen, as well as some people who are from the No Name League, basically they're everyone that isn't fascist is fighting against them. But obviously the Raven Union is in the larger percentage because they also have the military on their side as well, so they have all that armory as well, so showing that it's a very one-sided thing. And obviously you see the propaganda of just oh man, everyone in the streets being oh yeah, Raven Union's so amazing. And obviously there is at least one neutral zone, which obviously Alfred and Baza and Dave Boy are working out of. They run in the club and everything, and it's a one neutral zone. Doesn't matter. It's no politics here, which obviously you can almost make parallels to maybe that's what they're kind of going for. Little parallels to real world, where obviously politics can heavily divide people. So it's hey, this is supposed to be a safe zone. No politics. Everyone comes here to enjoy themselves type of situation. I even like that guy stepping to Alfred, and he's you should show more respect. And Alfred was respect, and stepped towards him. Home dude backed up. He shut up real quick. Because I guess it's because everyone in the Raven Union knows who Alfred is, just all that he's accomplished, so they know not to mess with him. But also because, what his dad did. Because everyone knows what his dad did, especially with the Raven Union in control. And that ended up being because obviously we had the whole, because we opened with the whole Martha thing, her kind of threatening to kill a guy if she doesn't get information. But it's obviously you could tell she was still kind of shaking. So it's not something it's hard to say whether or not, if this situation came to it, would she have actually pulled the trigger or not. I don't think, she's become a little hardened in that time, but I still, because she doesn't like who she becomes. But the fact is that she's still kind of I don't like who I become, makes me think there's still enough of her in there to be not liking, crossing any lines she doesn't necessarily want to. But, for her, it's obviously she joined with the No Name League because she believed in what they believed. So for her, it's a situation that she's fighting against, fascism. And that's also the thing, too. We still are unclear why Martha is doing this, why she is so invested in. It makes sense. What happens in one country affects every country, can affect the change of the world. The Raven Union running things could affect Europe as a whole, and then eventually spread out, and that could have major implications and effects on the rest of the world as well. So it makes sense. So it's one country's problem or place's problem isn't always just their problems. It usually will have worldwide ramifications, essentially. So but it's still a thing of you're from the, at least implies you're from the U.S. So it's why are you so even in season 1 you never really get full. We find out about her dad being in the military, so maybe that plays some part in it. We still don't 100% know Martha is all about kind of, I guess, freedom. And so what obviously the No Name League kind of represents is kind of her, kind of people's freedom, and not kind of the dictatorship that the Raven Union is in that part. But even then, it's still, there's a lot to that we still don't know about her part to play in all this. But obviously she's kicking it with Aziz, who's now risen in the ranks, which for him, he's it's not really, he's actually, it's more of a messed up situation. The fact is that I'm in this position. It's less congratulations, more I'm sorry that I got this, you should actually be more sorry that I got this promotion. But obviously Alfred does some work for them. Obviously he gets paid for it, which Martha isn't too happy about it. It's what are you going to spend the money on? He's cars and loose women. And Aziz is he's teasing you, Martha. But it's obviously he is saving up the money. He's getting all this money for something, because it's he's not being altruistic here. Because it's nah, because he did go through the trouble of saving the Queen. So you would think he'd be more on her side. So you'd probably do stuff for free. But it's also he has a complicated relationship. I mean, not just the whole, well, they banged, but also, like, he saved her by killing his dad. Also, he was in the military for 10 years, so he also served the queen in that regard. So he has a complicated relationship, because for him, it was like, after he got out of the military, I'm going to do what I want to. I'm going to live my life for me and not someone else, because he spent, like, 10 years living his life for someone else, you know, being the Queen's soldier, using the Queen's bullets, as he would constantly refer to them, those being the Queen's bullets in season 1. So it's interesting to see him in this position, considering everything. But it turns out what they're saving up the money for is for him, Dayboy, and Basil to bounce out of London, like go to the States. It's like, well, the States ain't as good as like the movies make them. And it's like, yeah, but if they're half as good as they make them look, the US look like in the movies, then it's twice as good as being here. So they just needed a few more jobs before, because obviously they were hired to like kidnap a dude named Salt. Why he was important, they never really got into that, to be fair. That's how this whole thing works. Like, especially when it comes to, interestingly enough, with the jobs with Martha. Like, anytime he had a job with Martha, I mean, the only time was when they were looking for the new leader was Francis. That was the only time, like, Martha gave him a little more heads up, because that job escalated and turned into something. But obviously, like, the first job of him working with Martha, she didn't tell him a lot of stuff. So, but at the same time, we have many other moving pieces. We have in the U.S. the CIA not willing to really act on this, like, because they made it pretty clear last season how they felt about this whole situation. They prefer it to be like, they had preferred it to be the No Name League. They rather, like, but it's fine if they ended up both destroying each other. Like, you know, they're looking out for the U.S.'s best interests, and it's like, you know, whoever, you know, so obviously they want to make it seem like, hey, we're still neutral, even though Thomas, it's like, we should back up the Queen and, like, you know, the England League. We should back up the League because, you know, that's kind of the more right situation, instead of like letting fascism run rampant, you know, with the Raven Union. So, but obviously the government's like, you know, they're like, oh, well, we'll hear your request, Thomas, but they say, oh, you did good work, so we're sending you back, but only if you're in this 100%. If you're not, you can back out now. But he's like, nope, I'm 100% by your decisions and stuff like that. Obviously he's not, because eventually he meets up with Martha, and obviously they're trying to pick up where they left off. But obviously for him, he's like, I'm engaged. And I was wondering, is that, I mean, for one, is that true? I'd assume it is, but I'm wondering, does that have something to do with maybe everything that went down, obviously, with the whole Crowley situation? I'm sure that showed him a side of himself that he wasn't too fond of. And then also it probably scared him, like, getting close to Martha, because he really does like her, so that probably scared him off a little bit, where it's like, no. So, like, either he rushed to engagement, or maybe he just using whoever his new lady, like, that maybe she's just, I mean, sadly, it might be just a situation of either it was a family decision, like it's kind of an arranged marriage, or it might be more of a situation where, because I'm wondering, because like I talked about this before, I might have brought this up during season 1 of Pennyworth, but I know that someone had said that there's actually, at least someone had hinted to me when it came to Batwoman, that there's actually bad blood between the Kanes and the Waynes. At least I think maybe there's some comic book runs where that's the case. I don't know if that's always the case. It's never really come up too much, because obviously, like, they've never really dived too deeply. I mean, at least within, like, the Batman stuff I'm familiar with, it's never, at least that I'm aware of, it's never really come up about his mom's side of the family. I mean, usually they don't really tackle too much of his family anyway. You know, obviously Gotham dived deeper in, like, some Thomas stuff, but, like, not too much on the Martha front. But, I mean, I just think it's interesting. That was all the point I was trying to make in a grand scheme of things. But I'm curious, like, does that have anything to do with it? Maybe not. That might be something they don't touch in this canon. It might be, you know, just a different reason. Like I said, it might just be like, oh, this is getting too serious, and I'm, you know, maybe considering his CIA connections and stuff like that. Like, he wants to do the right thing as well, because he came to warn Martha, but it was, you know, she's like, oh, you're here for information. He's like, no, like, I know you guys want to lose this, but for him, it's like, I want to be your friend. He cares about her, so it's like, and I know that was kind of like a whoa, when she was like, oh yeah, I had your cock in my hand for like 5 minutes, and then you got shot. You know, it's like, that's not a relationship. It's a funny story. You know, it's like, obviously she's trying to distance herself because she felt embarrassed. Like, oh, I tried to kiss you, and it's like, oh, that's not what we are. Fine, well, yeah, it's not like anything happened between us. It's like, you both obviously are really into each other, but him pulling away made her pull away, you know? So I guess for her it was just kind of, you know, because now she also sees, like, you know, now she's going to be looking at Thomas as like, oh, you're just that CIA agent, like that's all you really, you know, you're here for. But he's like, if you ever need me for anything, I'm here for you. He is trying to be there for her because he doesn't want her to die. He doesn't want her to get caught up all in this, especially because he's like, it's a losing war. You know, so there's that whole thing. Then there's the Queen calling up Alfred, and he's like, I'm out. And obviously the Queen is like, well, you're a hard... Like, we don't know how many interactions they've had in the past year. Because she's like, yeah, that's the third time she's called this week. His mom was like, that's the third time she's called this week. And he was like, yeah, I'll talk to her the next time. And obviously... it's not just him, Baz, and Dave Boy that he's trying to get out of London. He's trying to get his mom out too, but she has no interest in going to the U.S. She's like, yeah, just because I like cabbages doesn't mean I want to live in a cabbage patch. But he was like, you don't know what you're going to, like, you get there, you're going to love it. She's like, no, I'm not. But because for her, it's like, this is her home. And like, she has so many memories here, which for him, it's like, that's even more reason to get out. Because London, he's like, this is where I killed my dad. This is where Esme died. Like, it's just too many bad memories in London. But for her mom, and for his mom, it's like, but this is our home. Like, yeah, you might have those bad memories, but it's like, hey, your dad, it was kind of a martyr to the Union, so they won't cross me, they won't go against or do anything or harm me. But it's just obviously Alfred wants to know that his mom is safe. It's like, but it's like, you know, you going out on your own, that's fine. That's just how things are supposed to be. But for her, it's like, and she even implying, like, I don't have that much life left to live anyway. And Alfred's just kind of looking, he doesn't say anything. And that's, you know, because usually, sadly, that happens, and, you know, it's come up from time to time. And, you know, sometimes significant others, when someone loses their significant other, sometimes they follow pretty soon after, because you almost just kind of give up living, sadly, you know. So it makes you worried, like maybe Alfred's mom is in that position because she thinks, well, I'm older anyway, but also having lost the man that she loves, you know. And obviously the whole thing still haunts Alfred, because it's like, yeah, I saved the Queen and everything, but I did it by stopping and killing my dad. And even to the point, like, he had that nightmare where those guys from his military days were, you know, it's like the enemy, and it's like, oh, Dad, you gotta get out. It's like, oh, I thought these were your buddies. And he's like, now, who are you again? He's like, I'm Alfred. He's like, that's funny. I had a son named Alfie. I don't know how they interpret that, whether that's supposed to be kind of like oh, my son went against me and he's no longer my son, or whether that's supposed to imply, like, that whole dream made me think Alfie was probably like, I mean, you never know what dreams are 100% about, but maybe in this instance, it's supposed to reflect Alfie being scared. Like, he's like, what if I hadn't come back? Like, if I had died, like, maybe my dad would still be alive, because, you know, me being alive led to that whole situation. So maybe if I died, kind of implying that maybe his dad was saying, like, oh, I had a son, Alfie, and basically he died while he was in the military. Maybe that's what that dream's about. Like, if I had died, maybe my dad would still be alive. Like, things would have played out differently, you know? He's riddled with guilt, whether he'll show it or not, or really talk about it, you know? And obviously you have Dave Boy talking about all the stuff about going there. Basically, you can go to places and hook up with people that hook up with ladies that look like celebrities. And it's like, you already talked about that earlier. He was like, well, it's worth repeating, because it's like, you brought that up like 2 days ago. There's also restaurants that are like dinosaurs. It's like, yeah, but what's the point? Once you get inside, you can't see the dinosaurs. And it's like, yeah, but still, you know. So they end up breaking into Salt, which I love. Alfie was like, oh, we thought someone was being murdered, but it was him banging his lady. And it's like, and then Dave Boy comes in, and then he's like, yes, I already said that, Dave Boy, that we thought was a murder going on. So obviously Salt knows who Alfie is. I mean, I'm sure, like, everyone, like I said, at this point kind of knows who he is. So they are transporting Salt, and Salt's like, oh, all you're doing this for is money. And he's like, no, it's not about money. He's like, well, what is it? He's like, basically, like, I've got dreams, and like, what are they? But obviously Alfred doesn't get into them. Hands Salt over, they get paid, because Salt was like, hey, you break me out, I'll give you more money. Then later on we see that they end up getting jacked by we now later on find out it's someone that Alfred knows, Gilly, played by James Purefoy, which obviously know him from Hap and Leonard. The Following, I think, was on the Fox show, was like the first show I ever saw him in, and also season 1 of Altered Carbon. Because there was at least something else, I couldn't remember what it was, but it was like Altered Carbon. That's the other thing I knew him from. But But to see him in this, I was like, hey, because I had seen something that said that he was going to be in this season. I didn't know what his character was going to be. I didn't expect there to be, like, at first, because, like, obviously Aziz is, like, coming back and, like, oh, obviously he thinks it was Alfie behind it. Alfie's like, oh, you want to accuse me of screwing you over? He's like, all the times you screwed me over, you know, it's like, it's really kind of comical. But then Alfie slips by saying, like, oh, like, if you were dumb enough to only have this one car going down this specific route, Aziz caught on to it. Alfie didn't realize it, but he let too much slip, because it's like, you knew not only where we were going, but you knew the exact transportation. So Aziz kind of plays it off. It's like, you're right, I'm just looking for someone to blame, but he knows Alfie was behind it. And I guess for him, he's like, well, it sucks, but I don't know whether Aziz will do anything about it, because it's like, yeah, to be fair, I have screwed you over quite a bit in the past. So, you know, you screwing me over in this instance. But it's also like, oh, he's higher up. And even Alfie was caught off by that. He's like, wait, that was someone high? You never explained that was someone higher up. And it's like, oh, did he mention anything? Stormcloud, what's that? And it's like, oh, nothing. Maybe it's nothing. And it's like, well, now we know that Alfie basically screwed the pooch on this situation, because by letting Salt get away, there's going to be a whole complicated mess of ramifications for this. It's going to be that situation where it's like you trying to look out for your own best interest, doing whatever you want that's best for you, might screw over a lot of people, you know. And hell, your mom might get caught in that sad crossfire too because of your, you know. So that's something to kind of be considered. Because, you know, obviously he meets up with Gilly later on. And then later on, you're kind of like, I mean, to be fair, more often than not always, but more often than not, he plays some very, James Purefoy, you kind of feel bad because he gets at those characters where you're like, whether it's his character from The Following or Altered Carbon, where it's kind of like, you're a weird, shady dude. So he comes off with that. I mean, granted, like I said, like, even in It Happened Leonard, he's a much more, like, you know, a very, very different character. But it's just, he just comes off a little menacing, where he's just like, yeah, people you can trust, really trust. I'm like, I don't like that. So I'm guessing, like, he might play some, I don't know. Him and Alfie are probably going to cross paths, like, as enemies at some point later down, because it's like, you know, I don't know. So Alfie did take advantage of that situation to get Salt out, but didn't realize that he was top brass. And it's like, at the end of the, like, Alfie's just making it seem like, well, we could have gotten paid more. Like, he's trying to make it seem like he doesn't care, but he does care. That is the problem. It's just, it's that selfishness while being young, and also trying to look out for yourself and everyone else's best interest. Plus, he's dealing with the hurt of his dad. So, like, he's not in best state of mind, you know, with all of that. So that has to be considered as well. That he isn't, you know, thinking with the most clear conscience, because I'm sure he feels his guilt over, you know, killing his dad to stop him. It's like, yeah, even if, you know, you feel like your dad was in the wrong, because even now he even refers to his dad as misguided, you know. So, like, obviously, you know, as Salt was like, oh, he's good at finding out how people tick. It's like, yeah, like, Alfie's got a lot of conflicted feelings about his dad, because he still loves his dad, and his dad was his hero and everything, but it's also like, he did do, you know, it leaves, and he will never have an opportunity to really kind of fix that, for their relationship to end on that, and he'll never get to talk to his dad and just, you know, I mean, all he has is his dad's last words that they played in the recap at the beginning, like, no matter what others say about me, you remember me for me, you know? So, like I said, a lot of complicated feelings. Speaking of complicated feelings, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the whole, I was wondering, I was like, is that Sandra? It totally is Sandra that was on stage singing, so it kind of seems like Alfie hasn't told her that he's bouncing with Bazza and Dave Boy. I would assume so. I could be wrong, but I'm curious to see kind of where things go on that front, because I'm sure for him, he probably, after the whole Esme thing, probably not going to jump into, like, obviously there's a casualness to it, because obviously Sandra likes Alfred, but it's not 100. It doesn't seem like it's 100% like on both ends on that regard. So he probably is a little reluctant to be in a relationship, just because it's like, yeah, that whole Esme thing. So I'm sure that will keep him from going that far. I don't know. We'll kind of have to see on that front. But since I brought it up earlier, there's a whole Stormcloud thing. We found out what that is. Basically, it's a gas weapon of some, you know. The whole point of it, it's like to kill people, but I guess, like, Salt wants it to make it look painless, because it's like he wants it to make it seem like people die peacefully. Because if it's this powerful weapon that, like, kills people in a very unsightly way, you're going to lose the little people. But if you can make it, like, not seem as brutal of a means of killing, I guess it will at least make it seem less evil of a means of killing someone that it really is. I don't know. I'm curious to see how they spin that, but also shows you, like, once again, why Alfred screwed up, because this is the guy making, he isn't just a torturer dude. He's the dude concocting, like, the weapon that's probably going to lead to a lot of people dying, and you basically returned him to the Union, so that's going to be a whole mess. I think it's interesting because we never really saw, because obviously we see the videos of Harwood, but that's about it. We don't actually see him in the episode, but we do get to see Bet, which I thought was maybe Peg was there with him or whatever. I'm curious because we saw Bet, we didn't see Peg, but Bet's at a God, what was the word that they used? It's kind of like a prison or something like that. Basically, they interrogate people and stuff like that, and she's there, interrogating people. And then there's one particular woman, I forgot the lady's name, but she's interrogating this episode, and obviously she's trying to get answers. It's like, all right, who's your co-conspirators type of thing? Like, who else is not down with things being what they are? But even the lady was like, why are you doing this? He's like, because Bet's like, politics isn't why I'm doing this. Like, we know she's doing this because obviously she's tight with Harwood, but even then it's like, I mean, maybe that's why we haven't found Peg, because Peg was like, I'm not down for this, so she just went home. Maybe, I don't know. But at least with, because obviously they ended up breaking out all of them, and now they're in control and everything, but it's like, Bet, why is she here though? Like, she's like, if she could be anywhere, if she could do what she really wanted, she'd be off as an air hostess, because it's like, be able to see the world, but also be able to help people, So it's like, why are you doing this? Is it just because you feel indebted to Harwood, just because he is a friend and so important to you, and you're so important to him, so you're willing to do what he wants to, even though you don't like it? Because, it's interesting, like, because Bet is that type of person that kind of does whatever she wants. And the moment, like, the lady she was interrogating was like, I'm part of the arts, I was like, is she going to think of Esme? Because, obviously she was in love with Esme. And it's like, granted, this lady says that she does, like, pictures. I was wondering if she was going to be an actor, too. I figured that would probably really trigger her and make her think of Esme. But that guy came in, and basically he was going to do some super nasty shit. He unzips himself, and you can tell he's about to pull out his penis and stuff. He's spreading her legs open, because it's also like, she needs to strip off her clothes. Bet bashes his head in, and the lady's like, stop, he's already dead. And it's like, what, are you a doctor now or something? Continues bashing his head, kicking him, and then spits on him, because it's like, am I the woman that get the tea now? She was like, I'm a captain, basically, respect me, motherfucker, type of situation. But it's also because I think she probably, I don't know whether she'd already seen something like that happen before, or maybe this was the first instance of it, but it's like, I don't know. I think maybe a woman being hurt like that probably made her think about Esme, or maybe it's just her in general being like, I'm not about to let that happen to a woman. But for her to basically take her away, and she's like, where are we going? It's kind of like, don't you worry about it. I guess, like, I wonder, is it the thought of Esme? Like, has she found her new obsession with this lady, or is it just because the lady reminds her of Esme to a certain extent? Because obviously it's very similar circumstances to how her and Esme first met. Like, you're in my care. I'm basically I'm keeping you hostage type of situation. I don't know. I'm curious, what that ends up turning out to be as well. I should also point out a line that I really liked from this episode. I should have talked about it earlier. Was like Thomas comparing like what's going on in London, making Arkham Asylum look like nothing. And you're like, Jesus, that says a lot, because But to be fair, this is Arkham in the '60s, so who knows what that really is like? Maybe, I mean, granted, a lot of like the Batman villains that we know don't exist in this continuity, at least that we're aware of. So it's like none of them are running like in and out of Arkham like we know they eventually will be. So for him, and so Arkham's probably bad, but it's probably not nearly as bad as it will be, because obviously it's once again the whole thing of, does Batman bring out the quote unquote freaks, or do the freaks bring out Batman? That chicken or the egg type of situation. But I just thought that line was just kind of interesting. But I am curious to see, speaking of Thomas, like what he is going to do. Like, your allegiance is to the CIA. Because obviously he agreed with like, I'm 100% okay with what you guys are doing, simply because it meant he could come back to check on Martha. So it's, is his personal feelings going to get in the way? I'd assume they are, of what's going on, like, how low he's going to be able to keep up that quote-unquote neutrality that the U.S. is supposed to be keeping up. But because even he doesn't, even all of this doesn't sit well, because, you know, even Thomas has his own, you know, moral compass. And I mean, granted, it's like, does he really care as a whole? I think he does, because he was the one that was like, hey, we should be helping, you know, the League take down fascism. But is it purely that, or is it mainly because of Martha? Maybe not. I don't know. That'd be kind of interesting to find out. But now that he's got more money, does Alfie have enough to get him and everyone out? Like I said, this whole thing with Gilly, like, what's that going to turn into? What role is he going to play in all this? It's definitely going to be interesting. I'm excited to have Pennyworth back. I'm so curious to see where this season takes us with everything. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.